Hello. If all you have is a yoga mat for this practice, you can still do everything, and I'll offer modifications. But if you have a bolster, or some blocks, or a yoga strap, they'll be useful for a couple of poses. So we're going to start on our backs. If you have yoga blocks, you can place them on your mat so they look like they're in a T position. So on the mat, they would look like this. And so, whoops, you can, the one for your head, the one in the upper one is for your head, which you can make taller if that's more comfortable, or you can have it flat on the mat. So they look like a T position. And this one, the one that's lengthwise on your mat, goes between your shoulder blades, well above your waist. You don't want it to interfere with your low back, but also below your, well below your neck, just an inch or two below your shoulders. And then the other one rests your head on it. And if this is not comfortable, you can place, you can flip the one for your head to the higher position. And then just rest it so it's securely, your head is securely on it. And if you have a bolster, you can place the bolster lengthwise on your mat and make a fist and just slide your hips back to your fist. So there's just a tiny bit of space between your hips and the lower part of the bolster. And then rest your arms away from the mat, palms turned up. And if you simply have a yoga mat, just come right onto your back. And whether or not you're using props, walk your feet out as wide as the mat and let your knees come together. And rest and breathe. Allow your breath to be natural. Just pause here and observe your breath. Simply by observing the breath, it will often regulate to be exactly what we need. If we're anxious about something, simply by observing the breath, it will often slow down a little bit, and we'll begin to breathe a little bit more slowly and more deeply. Pranayama, or breath control, is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. And often you'll hear me mentioning to breathe, inhale as you lift your arms up, and I'll tie the breath to the movement. It's all part of the practice. Today in this yin class, we'll be focusing on breath. There's a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Buddhist monk. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment. Breathing in, calm. Breathing out, smile. Present moment, wonderful moment. So we'll be here for a few breaths. As you inhale, invite your chest to open a little wider. Allow your breath to be maybe a little longer and slower. Exhale completely and let your body fully relax. If you prefer in this position, you can also straighten your legs. See how that feels on your low back, or just keep your feet on the mat. Continue to inhale deeply, taking advantage of the extra space you've created in your lungs, and your chest. If you're flat on the mat without any props, walk your shoulder blades together and let your chest open a little wider. We'll be here for another minute or two. If you wish to add a hip opener to this pose, you can place both feet on the mat, knees bent, and walk your feet together, and then let your knees open wide away from you. Just see how that feels on your back. It may or may not agree with you. Your eyes can be open or closed. Simply observe the breath. Be here for 5 or 6 more breaths. And then wherever your legs are, just bring your feet on the mat, knees and feet about hip distance apart. And just come on up enough to remove whatever props you're using. And then come back onto your back. And gently hug your knees to your chest. You might want to just loosely hug your knees to your chest, or it might feel better to tightly hug them. Maybe rock side to side or stay perfectly still. Another nice option here is to take your knees wide over towards each shoulder. It's just a wider hugging knees to the chest. If you prefer, you can keep your spine, your hips flat on the mat. And now lower your right foot to the mat and hug your left knee to your chest. If you prefer a deeper stretch, you can straighten that right leg. And now hug the right knee to the chest, lowering the left foot to the mat or straightening the left leg. See what resonates most with your body, what you need. And now bending both knees, lower both feet to the mat and roll over onto one side and come on up to a seated position. If it's more comfortable for you in a cross-legged seated position in Sukhasana, you can sit on a block. By sitting on a block, that elevates your hips and it gives them a little bit more space. So from the side, it looks like this. Or you can sit right on the mat if that agrees with your hips and your body. Simply breathe here. Think about lengthening the crown of your head taller, lengthening your spine as you inhale, and letting go as you exhale. Think shoulders back, still nice open chest. Breathe. And take a look how your legs are crossed. One leg will be in front. And simply uncross the legs and place the other leg in front, sitting cross-legged the opposite way. Hands can rest on your knees or by your side. Notice if any part of your body is holding on to tightness or tension. Use your breath to visualize breathing into that area. And as you exhale, visualize that tension, the tightness, dissolving and releasing, melting away. And just a couple more breaths here. And uncross your legs and straighten your right leg. Take a look at your foot and make sure the toes are not pointing out or in, that the foot is just vertical. And bring the sole of the left foot to the right inner thigh. Left knee is bent. Left knee may lift a bit. And again, this is a pose where, if you prefer, you can sit on a block. Now turn and face your right leg. So it's a small twist here, and then walk your hands forward. Or if you're feeling tight, you can just keep your hands behind you. Or if you have a strap and you want to use a strap, you can place a strap around the arch of your foot. And just tug the strap back. And just softly, without forcing, let your chest move forward towards that right foot. Just think of letting go into the pose. If it's comfortable for you and your back feels okay, you can round your back and let your head lower towards that right knee. Just invite your body to let go a little bit more with every breath. Just a couple more breaths here. Then slowly make your way back up. Now straighten your left leg so your legs are out in a V shape. So reach under each thigh and just internally rotate the muscles as if you could separate the legs. Maybe in this pose you start with your hands behind you. From the side, it looks like this. Or with your hands, push the mat away from you, pushing your chest forward, walking your hands forward. And again, just work towards keeping each foot vertical as you come forward. If you have blocks, you can maybe rest your forehead on a block or two, if that's more comfortable. Use the props in any way that makes the pose a little bit more comfortable without interfering with it. Always make space to invite your body to melt and let go a little bit deeper. As you exhale, can you release a little bit more? It might just be less than a millimeter, but notice if you can relax into the pose. Just a few more breaths here. And then take your time and slowly make your way back up. And now bring your legs together. Legs are still straight out front. And maybe with your legs straight in front, again, you can sit on a block if you prefer. Or you can just place your hands on the mat behind you and with your hands push your chest forward. Or maybe you can fold forward a little bit more and walk your hands forward. And this is another pose where if you're using a strap, you can place a strap around your feet. And you're not tugging with the strap, it's just supporting you, encouraging your torso forward. You can either keep your spine straight, visualizing your chest folding forward towards your toes, or if you prefer, you can round your back and let your head lower towards your knees. Maybe here you place a block on your legs to rest your forehead on. Maybe adjusting the block after a few breaths to a deeper version. And again, let your breath support your practice. As you inhale, draw the breath into an area that's holding on to tightness. And as you exhale, visualize that tightness melting away and dissolving with the exhale, releasing and letting go. And a couple more breaths here. And slowly lift out of this pose. And now bend your knees and let your knees open wide. You might continue to sit on a block. It just gives your hips a little bit of space. And your knees can be halfway between your hips and your heels. If it's comfortable on your low back, you can bring the feet in closer to your hips, but it's nice to have an extra bit of space. So nice to have your legs out in a sort of a square. And maybe your hands are on the mat behind you, and with your hands you push the mat away from you to lean forward. Or perhaps today you can reach your hands forward and grab your shins, ankles, maybe your toes. And from here, just let your knees open wide. Feel heavy away from your body. Option to round your back and let your head lower the direction of your feet. You can also put a block between your feet, resting your forehead on a block at any height. Or just practice a pose without any props at all. Your hands might stay on the mat behind you for the whole pose. It's just about finding your edge, going as far as you can in the pose and then just hanging out there without forcing. Let your body release when it's ready. Your breath can help encourage the release as you exhale. Visualize your body letting go a little bit more. And just 4 or 5 more breaths here. And slowly lift back up. And now straighten your left leg and bring the sole of the right foot to the left inner thigh. Maybe on this side, you can keep your hands on the mat behind you or sit on a block. Work towards keeping that left foot vertical. And just turn to the left so your torso is facing that left leg. With your hands, you can push your chest, push the mat away from you to push your chest forward. Or you can walk your hands forward. You can also place a strap around that foot to hold with your hands. Just breathe. Can you soften more deeply into this pose, into Janu Shirshasana? And just a couple more breaths. And when you're ready, slowly come on up. And if any props are on your mat, you can move them aside and come right onto your belly. So we're coming into Sphinx pose. So place each arm on the mat. So each elbow, each forearm is on the mat. And your shoulders are in front, sorry, your elbows are well in front of your shoulders, so a couple of inches in front. Spread your fingers wide and have each elbow shoulder width apart, so your forearms are parallel to each other. And then you can press your belly into the mat, lift your chest up, think shoulders back, and just look straight ahead. If your low back is at all sensitive and this bothers it, you can walk your elbows forward a little bit more, and you'll still get the benefit of this chest opener. If everything feels really good and you want to go deeper, bring each elbow back a bit so your elbows are almost under your shoulders. Your lowest rib cage might be just barely resting on the mat. And think soften the shoulders, lower and back, and chest forward. And Sphinx pose. The next pose we're coming into is seal pose. If Sphinx already feels like enough of a chest opener, just stay right here. Otherwise, take your arms away from you in the mat. And so your arms are sort of going out at like a 45-degree angle from your shoulders. And then just bring your hands in just a few inches and lift yourself up. So your hands are just pointing out 45-degree angle. If this is too much on your low back, come back into Sphinx pose. Just be here for barely a minute. And think of chest forward. Your arms, it might appear straight, but your elbows are ever so softly bent. The muscles are engaged, the elbows are not locked here. Just a couple more breaths. And bend your elbows, slowly lower to the mat. Place your hands on the mat. Lift up to tabletop. And with the tops of the feet on the mat, lower your hips over your heels and stretch your arms forward. Maybe your forehead reaches the mat, or you can make fists and stack your fists, rest your forehead on your fists. If you have a block, you can rest your forehead on a block at any height. Just take a couple of breaths. This is a nice counter pose to a chest opener. And then slowly lift your hips up over your knees. If you have blocks, have them handy. You may or may not want to use them. And coming into tabletop, step your right foot forward and place your right foot between your hands. And then send your hips forward. If you want to use blocks, you can place your hands on blocks. From the front, this is the pose. Looks like this. Just think of softening both hips forward. If your right knee is passing your ankle or your toes, walk your left knee back. You want your right knee just above or even behind that ankle. It's just a little bit gentler on the knees. And breathe. Use your breath. And think about exhaling your body more deeply into the pose. Notice where there's resistance and breathe into that area and offer it to melt away. And now bring both hands to the inside of the foot. And from here, bend your elbows and think about lowering your chest towards the mat. Hug that right knee to the right shoulder. Press the right toe of the big foot deeply into the mat. Keep it flat on the mat. Bending your elbows, lowering your chest. Maybe your forearms come onto the mat, or you can place your forearms on a block, or you can just keep your hands on the mat. But just think of softening deeply. Hug that right knee to the right shoulder, pressing the big toe of the right foot, the inside of the foot deeply into the mat. Still offering the hips forward. Just a couple more breaths. And then lifting back up, and from here, just with your arms straight, lift the toes up off the mat of the right foot. Turn the right toes out, roll onto the baby toe side, and lift the big toe up off the mat. So the knee is sliding out to the right. And now from here, I don't know if you can see, from here, now Lower your chest, bend the elbows, lower the chest towards the mat, still sending the hips forward. Maybe your forearms come onto the mat. Maybe your forearms come onto a block. Just let that right knee roll out to the right. Just be aware of your breath. Just a couple more breaths. And then place your hands on the mat. Bring the foot back down to the mat. Step the right knee back beside the left. And from here, come onto the tops of your feet. If you have a bolster, you can have it handy. You may or may, you don't need a bolster. I actually prefer this pose without. But have your hips directly above your knees and walk your arms forward. And let your chest open towards the mat. You can also rest your forehead on a block. Or where the bolster comes in is you can place the bolster across the mat and rest your chest on the bolster and let your head lower. But just think about keeping the hips above the knees. Arms are stretched forward and your forehead might dangle or maybe reach the mat. And a couple more breaths here. And then lift up and walk your hands back under your shoulders. And now step your left foot forward between your hands or even past. And then send the hips forward. So be mindful that if your left knee is passing your ankle, just walk the right knee back a bit, making space for your hips to come forward. Left knee and foot are pointed in the same direction. You might place your hands at blocks, on blocks at any height, or just have your hands on the mat. Just think of softening the hips forward. Letting your breath support your practice, the opening of the poses, the hips. Think of releasing more deeply into the pose. Right toes can be tucked or the top of the foot on the mat. Couple more breaths here. And now bring both hands to the inside of the left foot. So from the front, we'd had them on both sides. Now just bring them to the inside. Bend your elbows and lower your chest towards the mat. Maybe your forearms come onto the mat or onto a block. Or if you don't have blocks, you can just bend your elbows. But hug that left knee to the left shoulder. Press that big left toe into the mat and keep squeezing that left knee to the left shoulder. Breathe here. Think of letting go. You might want a block on one side and you don't need it on the other. Just think of releasing deeply into the pose, respecting your body's limits, but inviting it to loosen and let go a little deeper with every breath. A couple more breaths here. And then place your hands on the mat. You can straighten your arms. Lift the toes of your left foot up, so you're on the just on the heel, just on the heel. Pivot on the heel and turn the left toes out to the left. So you're lifting them up. Turn them out. Let that knee open wide. And then bend your elbows, aiming to lower your chest towards the mat. Maybe on this side you come onto your forearms, or you might just keep your arms straight, or rest your forearms on a block. Find the version that's right for you, letting that knee open wide away from you. And breathe here. Just notice where your body feels tight. Where can you let go? Think of relaxing your jaw, your face, your shoulders. And then inhale into wherever you're feeling tightness. And exhale, let it go. Let it soften. Release. Just a couple more breaths. And place your hands on the mat. Step your left foot back beside your right. Come onto the tops of the feet and lower your hips back into child's pose. You can have your knees together and rest your whole torso on your thighs. Another nice way to come into child's pose is take your knees wide, bring your toes together, and then rest your forehead either on the mat or on, you can make fists with your hands or on a block. See what feels best for your body. We'll just be here for a few more breaths. And then come up onto your hands. If your knees are wide, bring them together. And make your way to a seated position. So with your knees bent, just bring both feet over to the right and let your knees roll to the left. And now adjust your left leg so that it's in a 90-degree, left knee is in a 90-degree angle. Shin and thigh are 90 degrees. And left foot is flexed. Now bring the right knee to just behind the left heel. And now have the right leg in a 90-degree angle. And now twist to the left. And you might just keep your right hand on your left knee. Or you can place both hands on the mat and come onto your forearms right on the mat, or you can place your forearms on some blocks. And it's a gentle twist, but come into it as deeply as feels right for you. Think of letting go. Just a few more breaths here. And then slowly lift back up to a seated position. And now bring your knees back to center and let your knees roll over to the other side. So start with your right leg, have your right knee in a 90-degree angle with the shin and thigh, and then bring your left knee just behind your right knee and adjust the left foot, left leg, so it's at a 90-degree angle. And then turn to the right with your hands on the mat, or maybe your left hand rests on your right knee. And then option to come right onto your forearms or onto a block. And breathe here. Think of letting go. In Yin, we call this deer pose. Just a couple more breaths. And slowly make your way back to center. And now straighten the right leg, straight out in front. Bend the left leg, left foot on the mat. Cross the left foot over the right leg. With your right hand, grab the left ankle and pull it back as far back, as close to that right hip as you can, and keep that left foot flexed. Make sure it's not pointed. And then work towards lowering that left knee on top of the right. So if the knees are nowhere near each other, just visualize that left knee lowering on top of the right and work towards that. You can start with your hands behind you, and with your hands push the mat away from you to fold forward, or you can walk your hands forward. Now if you're not feeling a stretch at all here, this is Ardha Gomukhasana. There's another name for it in Yin, which escapes my mind right now. Shoelace pose. This is half shoelace pose. In Hatha we call this Gomukhasana. If you want to go deeper, bend the right leg, keeping that right foot flexed, and just bring it towards your left hip. And breathe here. Otherwise, you could just keep the right leg straight and breathe, still working towards having each knee on top of the other. Breathe. Let your breath support your practice. Think of letting go. Let your hips open a little more with every breath. A few more breaths. And then if you've got both legs straight, bent, just straighten the one leg. And then wherever you are in the pose, straighten the other leg. And just windshield wiper your feet side by side for a sec. And now keep the left leg straight, bend the right leg, right foot on the mat, and then cross the right foot over the left. And with your left hand, pull the right ankle back as close to the hip as you can and keep that right foot flexed. And then you can use your hands to help lower that right knee on top of the left. And maybe your hands are behind you on this side. You can also sit on a block in this pose. That also gives your hips a bit of space. And maybe on this side, you stay right here in half shoelace pose. Or if you want to go a little deeper, bend the left leg and bring the left foot close to the right hip. Keeping both feet flexed if both knees are bent. And simply breathe, hang out here. With every breath, just breathe into your hips or wherever you're feeling tightness. And exhale, release that. Let your body soften more deeply into the pose. Just a couple more breaths. And then straighten one leg and then the other. And just flex your toes towards you, just giving your hamstrings a nice, and the backs of your calves and legs, a nice little stretch. And now keep the left leg straight and bend the right leg, bringing the right foot on the mat near your inner thigh. You can stay here or cross that right leg over the left. With your left arm, hug your right knee. Reach your right arm out to the side and place it on the mat behind you and just gently twist to the right. Breathe. And slowly come on back to center. Uncross that right leg and bend the left leg. So left foot is on the mat. You can keep it on the inside of the straight leg, or if you can, cross it over onto the outside. With your right arm, hug your left knee. Reach your left arm out to the side and place it on the mat behind you and gently twist to the left. Breathe. Couple more breaths. And slowly come on back to center and uncross your legs. So I forgot to mention at the beginning of the practice, if you have a wall near where you're practicing, like a bare wall, we're going to come into a pose where you lay on your back with your feet straight up the wall. If you don't have a wall nearby that you can use, then you can lay on your back and hug your knees to your chest and rock side to side. But if you do have a wall, turn your mat so the end of the mat is near the wall. And then sit beside the mat. If your left hip, whatever hip is near the wall, slide that as close to the wall as you can. And then you can scoot your hips forward to the edge of your mat and come onto your back. And now lift your feet up off the mat and just turn, and so your hips, sit bones are right against the mat with your feet up the wall. And rest your arms on the mat away from your body. And as I mentioned, if you don't have a wall, you can just hug your knees to your chest, maybe rocking side to side, or move in any way that supports your body, your practice. We'll be here for a couple of minutes. And again, let your breath support your body. Without controlling your breath, invite it to be relaxed. Maybe slow down. You can keep your feet together if your legs are up the wall. Otherwise, some people like to just let your legs go wide. See what feels best for your body. Be here for maybe 4 or 5 more breaths. So if your legs are up the wall, bend your knees, and you can just roll over to one side and come onto your back. And with your feet on the floor, knees bent, slide your hips over to the right. Reach your arms on the mat away from your body and let your knees roll to the left. And turn your gaze and look to the right. Eyes can be open or closed. And gently bring your knees back to center. Slide your hips to the left. And let your knees roll to the right. Turn your gaze and look over your left arm. And then gently bring your knees back to center. Let your arms rest on the mat a couple of inches away from your body, palms turned up. And slowly straighten one leg and then the other. Just make any adjustments with your arms or legs so that your body can be completely comfortable and still and fully rest. And let your mind fully rest in Shavasana. If your mind wanders, simply notice the thoughts and let go. Just release them. And then observe your breath. And let both your body and mind fully relax in Shavasana. Allow your breath to deepen. Bring awareness to your fingers and toes. Gently move your arms and legs. And when you're ready, softly hug your knees to your chest and roll over to one side. And slowly make your way up to a comfortable seated position. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste.